everyone, and welcome back to Unedited Chatter with Stephanie and Tisha. We're super excited you're here with us today.
Unedited Chatter drops new episodes every other Wednesday. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And the socials will be listed in the show notes. This show is an independent production. The views expressed here are our own and not those of our professional roles or employers. This is our Unedited Chatter. And today we are so honored, honestly, and just excited to have Dr. Ross Greene with us. Dr. Greene is a clinical psychologist and the originator of the innovative and evidence-based approach called collaborative and protective solutions. He's the author of several books that we're going to list out in the show notes because each one brings a different, unique perspective. And today we're going to talk about one called The Kids Who Aren't Okay. Not done yet, though. Dr. Greene executive produced the award-winning documentary film, The Kids We Lose. He was on the faculty at the Harvard Medical School for over 20 years and is now the founding director of the nonprofit Lives in the Balance. He's also currently adjuncting, staying very active in higher education, and has worked with several thousand kids with concerning behavior and their caregivers. We are so honored to have him here to chat with us today. Welcome, Dr. Greene.
Thanks for inviting me to do this.
Your bio is a lot longer than what we stated, but it could have taken the entire 10 minutes. You have done so many fantastic things. So we promise it will be in the show notes. But I just want to start out with what we're going to talk about today. And it's one of your books, and it's called The Kids Who Aren't Okay, or one of your books is titled that. We know that this title is something that the teachers and administrators are seeing more. And why is this something that's so near and dear to your heart?
Because I don't like to see kids doing poorly, because a lot more kids are doing poorly these days than ever. The rates of depression and anxiety and suicidality and chronic school absenteeism and concerning behavior tells us that. That's something almost any educator already knows. I don't write a new book unless I feel like I have something new to say. There's a lot of things that have made it harder to be a kid that have occurred over the last 20 to 30 years. Those are the explanation. The big question is, what can schools do to respond to this new normal? Because business as usual, any educator will tell you, business as usual is still working for the kids who are still doing fine, but business as usual isn't working at all for the kids who aren't. So that's why the book, and it just dropped about a month ago, is called The Kids Who Aren't Okay.
So we have these external variables that are growing in our society. We have this very severe problem when we have those kids that are, to your point, going to always do okay, but when we have this growing population of kids that are not, and we have to meet those needs. So instead of talking about those external variables, what are some things that our teachers can do at the ground level with our children in the classroom?
Here's the short list. And by
Yeah.
the way, these aren't that difficult. Regrettably, they often aren't the focal point of a lot of schools, and they aren't where the structures of a lot of schools and a lot of policies that have come down the pike over the last 30 years have been pushing educators. So there's the big issue, and that's what the book is about. There's a mismatch between a lot of what goes on in schools and a lot of what's walking in the door. By the way, one of the points I make in the book is that educators really can't do much about a lot of those external factors. What they can do something about is what the kid is walking into in their school. So here's a few of the points that I make in the book. The definition of good teaching is meeting every kid where they're at. I don't know many educators who would argue with that. It's also the definition of good parenting. And by the way, that's not a foreign concept for educators. We've been shooting for differentiated instruction and personalized learning for a very long time. So that should not be new. We just have to formalize what that looks like and give educators permission to meet every kid where they're at. I know that sounds crazy, but a lot of times educators fear that they are going to get in trouble if, for example, they deviate from the IEP. No educator wants to get in trouble. Meeting every kid where they're at is the definition of good parenting and teaching. Why do we got to meet every kid where they're at? Because of what's walking in the door. And what's walking in the door is developmental variability. Something I almost never hear talked about in schools, but it's a fancy way of saying every kid is different. If every kid is different, then treating every kid the same, for example, trying to get them all over the same bar by the end of the school year, as we've been pressuring teachers to do for 20 or 30 years, you know what? Educators knew 20 or 30 years ago that high-stakes testing was a bad idea. They know it now. right? It was a bad idea because it was a movement away from meeting every kid where they're at and being responsive to the developmental variability that's walking in the door. One last biggie, because I know we're short on time. A lot of what we do in schools, especially with our most vulnerable kids, is late. It's crisis management. It's reactive. In chapter 3 of the book, which is called Set Up to Be Late, I and my co-authors go through all of these things that we do in our schools. The list is endless. Calming corners, taking a break, staff who are designated to show up on the scene when a kid is already losing it, restraint, seclusion, de-escalating. I could take up our whole time here going through all the things we do in our schools that are late. We don't have to be late. We could be early instead. But we have policies and structures, and the way we're training educators is on what to do once kids are already frustrated. With some intentionality, with some commitment, we could be early instead. And boy, would that make a world of difference for kids and educators.
And I don't hear that talked about in a lot of education arenas. I mean, that flipped perspective, if we, address what we need to address, it wouldn't become the problem that we're spending all this time in training to address,
That
right?
is correct.
Yeah. Sorry, Tisha, one more point. This is so fascinating to me. I have always loved the quote, and I guess I should figure out who it actually is said by. They don't care what you know until they know that you care. These high stake testing, nothing is going to grow in terms of the metrics and the data and the percentages that we need unless we meet the children where they're at. Academically, emotionally, Maslow's, physically, all of those ways, we have to take a look at each child for who they are and meet them exactly where they are and show them that we care about that, meeting that need. And then we might do a little better on all the testing that we do.
And we need to let educators know that doing that is valued, part of the job. I've had many educators say to me that they've taken all the humanity out of their job. We've always relied on educators to be among the most important socialization agents in our society. Time to put the humanity back in. One last quick point if we have time. The way to be early instead of late is to stop obsessing over kids' concerning behavior, which is what everybody's obsessing about. We count it, we quantify it, we modify it, and start focusing instead on the problems that are causing that behavior. The expectations kids are having difficulty meeting that give rise to their concerning behavior, or what I simply call, I use concerning behavior and frustration response or distress response interchangeably. One of the reasons we've been late for so long is because we've been focused on frustration responses for so long, rather than the problems that are causing those frustration responses, rather than having a school spend $20,000 or $30,000 a year retraining teachers to pin a kid to the ground when they've already lost control. We could be teaching educators instead, and quite frankly, for a fraction of that, how to solve problems with kids proactively and collaboratively, meaning the kid is now an integral, indispensable part of the problem-solving process. We make those changes. Part of this book is idealism, but most of this book is stuff that we're doing in schools all the time already, just not enough.
Right. And not proactively. It's always when there's a problem, we're doing something, but we're not doing anything.
So let me just ask you this. Why in the last 20 and 30 years have you seen, we all know, I probably know what you're going to say, why have things changed?
Why are things harder for kids? That list is fairly endless as well, but I'll give you my top ones.
Okay.
High stakes testing, zero tolerance policies, which is where we clamped down even harder on kids with punishment should they exhibit a frustration response. Consequences don't solve any problem. So we've been busy punishing and ramping it up. We've been solving nothing. There's a good recipe for losing a kid. Also on my list, school shootings. The kids and educators I talk to, and the data bear this out, a lot of them are scared of getting shot at school. We're trying to teach kids stuff in a place where a very high percentage of them do not feel safe, and where, this is not me being political, he shouldn't have said it, but where our current vice president a few months back told us that school shootings are now a fact of life. No. We'd have to start taking this more seriously. We can't let politics get in the way. We're losing too many kids and educators. The percentages, by the way, of educators and kids who are anxious about being shot at school are about the same. Okay. This is good for nobody. Those are among my top ones. But in chapter 1 of the book, I go through all of the things that have changed. It's actually rather sobering. I'm so glad. I'm lucky. I got to grow up a long time ago, right?
I
Things
think
are
the same thing.
much harder now.
Mhm.
Here's what's interesting. A lot of kids are still doing okay. It's just that a lot more than ever are not. Business as usual isn't going to do it for those kids. We got a new normal. Let's create schools that are addressing the new normal, even if schools can't address all the reasons for the new normal. Let's be responsive to what's walking in the door.
What's a real message we can end with for our educators? A large population of our listeners are in the classrooms, they're leaders. What is something that they can do right now to make a difference?
I feel your pain is the first thing I would say. I'm with educators weekly, if not daily on some weeks. I know how hard it is. I know that a lot of how hard it is has nothing to do with the educator themselves, but with the systems in which they work. Even if you can't create change immediately in your entire school, which would be ideal, hop on the Lives in the Balance website. That's the website of the nonprofit I founded. All kinds of free information on there. Learn about this model, start solving problems with the kids in your classroom. When your colleagues ask you what you're doing because it's looking pretty good, explain it to them, turn them onto the website, start a book study, get your principal and assistant principal engaged. Often that starts with one person, and often it doesn't start at the top.
It's true. So thank you so much for being here today. It was amazing information.